Ever wonder what the one right way to become a mother is? Well, there's no one right way. In fact, for many millennia, women have used all kinds of reproductive strategies to keep their genes on the planet. This is Mating Matters. I love being a mother, but if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I also sometimes hate being a mother. That's because motherhood is all about sacrifices, and the paybacks aren't always measurable by society. A dimpled, curly grin here, a warm snuggle there, a holiday singing pageant, or high school graduation where your kid makes you proud. All of these are brief respites between the sleep loss, the embarrassing public tantrums, usually the kid, but sometimes the mom, and the worry. No doubt about it, motherhood is burdensome. Despite this, about 80% of women become mothers one way or another, and most of the others are mothers to the village.
I always wanted to be a mother. Always, always, always. I was always the one that babysat in the neighborhood, always loved kids, loved little babies. I wanted to have 10 kids when I was growing up. That changed once I became a mom and realized how much work was involved. But growing up, that was my dream.
Welcome to Mating Matters. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh. In this episode, Mothers, MILFs, and Wives, Part 1, we're talking about women's reproductive strategies. If you're a woman, there are plenty of ways to keep your genes in evolution's chain or raise the species as a whole. Women have long had plenty of reproductive choices. If they have a baby, when they have a baby, with whom they have a baby, whether that baby will survive, and whether they'll care for their own or others. If you still believe, though, that love just happens and marriage and children are mostly about the luck of the draw, I want you to listen very closely. Things have changed since the 1930s when McCall's magazine put out this helpful little film, What a Housewife Must Know.
She must face death to bring children into the world. She must raise them, care for them, and pilot them safely to the threshold of manhood and womanhood. To her husband, she must be a companion, a sweetheart, a wife, and a mother. She must stir his ambition, pull him through failure, and keep success from hurting him.
Granted, even decades later, women's gender roles and reproductive choices seemed pretty limited. The media perpetuated the idea that a woman's role was to be a good wife and mother to one man for life. Even today, buried deep inside some progressive career women, lies some version of the dream of a house with a white picket fence, 2 children, and a wage-earning husband, because to some, that feels natural. And why not? It's been pumped into women's heads for a couple centuries. Here's a 1951 educational video on marriage.
Though we met at the church.
I hate to burst your bubble, but the idea of a nuclear family, the one with 2 parents, one being male and the other female, living in a home with children who are biologically related to both of them while they live happily ever after, is a relatively new invention for human beings. And it's not attained by the vast majority of people. More natural for us is a moving encampment of cooperative caregivers that may include grandmothers, brothers, friends, cousins, aunties, anyone a mother can enlist to help her out. When I say more natural for us, remember that humanoids have been on the planet for about 4 million years. That's how old our behavioral memory is. We've only been doing widespread modern farming and industry for about 400 years. Farming, by the way, was the big downfall for women because we were pulled away from our girl pack and plunked into narrow gender roles to become that barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen gal. But we women are wired for something very different from last century's idea of a nuclear family. And as you'll hear in this podcast, the modern women we spoke to are behaving in many ways like hunter-gatherer women in terms of their reproductive choices. The only difference is that many feel like they're failing because they aren't living up to that newfangled idea of a nuclear family. Like cave women, we are looking at our mating marketplace, making unconscious and sometimes conscious decisions about attracting, keeping, or replacing mates based on how well they provide or give care. We consider the timing of our pregnancies. That didn't begin with the invention of the birth control pill. Women all the time practiced staying away from men at certain times or putting all kinds of material inside their bodies as a barrier. We also weighed the pressures of our fertility window against the pressure to make enough money to feed our babies. There's no one right way to become a mother or a mother's helper. If you're feeling like you're failing, I'm here to pull you off the guilt train because I think we're returning to something more natural. And this return to what is more naturally female probably began with the advent of the birth control pill in 1962 and then with the march into offices in the 1970s. That was around the time Helen Reddy was singing, "I Am Woman." Let's start with the statistics. The research of Harvard-trained economist and demographer David Foote, now at the University of Toronto, shows that the big deciding factor in whether a woman will reproduce is her level of education. Graduate degrees are birth control. Yep, the more education, the less likely a woman is to have babies, and she'll likely have only one or two. The more a couple is educated, the more likely they are to have a barren nest or be child-free. And that group is growing. Child-free women were relatively rare in the 1950s, but today make up about 1 in 5 women. Hold that thought, because in a moment I'll explain how this is more natural for our species. Wealthier women may be having fewer babies because they run into fertility problems or a mate crunch in the mating marketplace when they spend a large part of their fertility window obtaining education and building careers. On the other hand, high school educated and lower income women are likely to have children earlier and have more children. This may be because reproduction may seem more urgent to those with fewer life choices. They also get a jump on finding mates early. And then sometimes there are the life-changing accidents. This woman was on birth control, engaged, and living with someone when she accidentally became pregnant at the age of 20. Unfortunately, the dude just wasn't having it, and he bailed.
Yeah, it wasn't in the plans with my son's dad. It was definitely one of those, hey, this would be great because we're in love in the future, and there was a plan and everything such as that. But then there was the unexpected blessing of my son. So it was definitely one of those things where I realized, oh, man, this is a lot harder.
She says she comes from a strict family, and even though she says she's pro-choice, she didn't feel she had many options if she still wanted her family's support.
And I knew even adoption wasn't going to be something because my mom was very like, I'm not having a family member live off with someone else, and, I'm not going to know anything. So they were big on that.
She told me she finally got up the nerve to tell her mother what was happening when she was about 4 months pregnant.
My mom would always, for bad joke, but she would always joke and be like, Mom, I have something to tell you. And it didn't matter what age. She'd be like, you're pregnant all the time. That was like her joke, right? But I remember, sitting her down and I was just like, so, Mom, I have something to tell you. And she was like, you're pregnant. And then I was like, yes. I was more afraid of seeing my mom cry in disappointment than having her beat my butt. My dad was not thrilled. My dad actually kind of lunged at me. Like, he was just like, what? My mom was definitely my rock. I actually became a single mom. So she was the dad in that aspect.
The man problem. Women's reproductive choices are intrinsically linked to the potential for male support, either financial support so she can hire babysitters or actual paternal caregiving. And that can be a crapshoot if you don't know what you're looking for. Anthropologist and primatologist Dr. Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy of UC Davis is known worldwide as one of the most important women in science for her contributions to female evolutionary behavior. Her books, Mother Nature and Mothers and Others, have always been my Bibles. Here is some of her UCLA talk called Born Human: How the Utterly Dependent Survive. You can find it on YouTube.
Fathers clearly have this potential to respond to babies. And you have this species where mothers need help so very much. In that case, how is it that paternal care varies so much? I mean, you have some men who are totally dedicated to their children, the Mrs. Doubtfires out there.
The character played by the actor Robin Williams in the movie Mrs. Doubtfire was so in love with his children that even after divorce, he went to great lengths to get hired as their nanny.
He's still the same old dad, only better.
Dinner is served, madam.
And you have other men certain of paternity, who behave as if they didn't even know they had children. How can this be?
Bad dads still find mates. Listen to the Mating Matters episode called The Trouble with Testosterone to understand why. Besides testosterone, though, are there other reasons why some men are good dads and others are cads? Well, for one, when there are more men in a mating marketplace compared to women, men are more likely to be monogamous and more into fatherhood. And when they spend more time with babies, their testosterone goes down and their prolactin and oxytocin go up. Men become better fathers by actively fathering. But right now, we have an oversupply of successful women and an undersupply of corresponding successful men. Thus, many men are focused on mating over child rearing, and many of them are balking at the idea of paying child support.
I bring home $1,626 a week, and $350 go to child support.
Brian says $18,000 a year in child support for his infant son is too steep. At 29 years old, he says he had to move back in with his parents.
And there's another reason there's such variance in whether men help with kids. According to Dr. Hrdy, men get lazy when the family lives in a matrilocal setting, meaning with her family and friends, rather than moving in with his family and friends. When a mother lives with her man's family, there's less support, so he has to help. You see, grandmothers tend to invest less in their sons' children and focus more on their daughters' kids. One of the reasons for this is because grandmothers are assured that their genes came out of their daughter. But their daughter-in-law? Who knows if another man has gotten access to her hidden eggs? This maternal grandmother preference is so prevalent in human beings that at least one government accidentally created a child welfare social policy in the form of an old age pension. According to the economist Esther Duflo of MIT, grandmothers in South Africa who received pensions turned out to have taller and healthier grandchildren when they were born to their daughters compared with those born to their sons. Bottom line, men can't always be counted on, and grandmothers may or may not be available. But what about those 1 in 5 educated women with no kids? Well, according to these women, they made their decision not to have children for a number of reasons. For instance, financial reasons, or because they couldn't find a mate on time.
If I found the perfect partner, I would want to, perhaps I would want to. I don't have the feeling of that wanting like some women do of like, I have to have a baby. In the past, when I have been with partners that I've felt in love with, I've thought about it, but it hasn't worked out. I haven't ever really wanted to be in a partnership and it break up with kids involved.
I could have been interested in having kids, but the guy had to come first. And I wasn't so hell-bent on having kids that I would have done it at any cost, you know, by myself or anything like that. Like I had to have the partner that I wanted. And he never showed up, you know, at least not in time. And so that was that.
Or they made the decision because their career is so fulfilling.
I guess I would say I am married to my job, and some people would think that was sad. However, I think it's great because I love the people I work with. I love the events that I go to. And it's really about my lifestyle that I love leading. Yeah.
I've moved around a lot in my life, and I feel like I've put career first. So children have never really been a goal of mine. And recently I decided that I don't think I want to have children. My work is very challenging, very demanding. You always have to be on mentally. You know, it's hard enough trying to take care of myself sometimes because the job is so demanding. It's hard to imagine having to take care of a whole nother person.
Some child-free women say it's for ethical reasons. They want to save the planet from overpopulation. And for others, it just might not have happened biologically. This woman says she never used birth control and never became pregnant.
I never consciously decided not to have children. It just never happened for me. And believe me, I worked in an industry where I knew people in, IVF, where I could have gone that way. I could have gone the surrogacy way. I never wanted to put my body through it.
And psychology plays a role, too, in whether a woman becomes a mother. Good mothers beget good mothers.
But I always knew I wanted to have kids because I thought my mom was a great mom, and she made it a wonderful experience for me. So I thought, well, I maybe could do this as well.
And sometimes it happens the other way around.
My childhood was great, but it wasn't the best. I had a mom who wasn't necessarily the most loving because she was very selfish. But I don't think that played a part in it so much. Like, I know I'd want to be different, but maybe in the back of my mind it was. I don't know.
Whether it's by choice or by circumstance, child-free women and men are paramount to human survival. Could this be Mother Nature's way of creating something evolutionary psychologists call extra alloparents? Alloparents are adults who may not be biologically related to children, but have a big impact on their survival. In Sarah Blaffer-Hurdy's book, Mothers and Others, she makes a great case that our explosion in intelligence is linked to the stimulation and care provided by other adults, teachers, doctors, coaches, pastors, neighbors, other mothers in that mommy group, and child-free women.
My cousin is a single mother, and she is going through absolute hell. Her partner left her with absolutely nothing and doesn't pay child support. So, I very much feel even more so to help them out financially.
So I just never had that absolute need to be a mother. And I think that's because I have lots of nieces and nephews. I'm very close with them. I've, been with them growing up, and I kind of felt like that fulfilled the need.
I have a niece who's following in the same footsteps as me, so I'm constantly mentoring her about her role in the company because she's doing the same thing that I do. Yeah, and then I have 2 other nieces and a nephew. So, yeah, I look at them and I think of them as my own.
I had moms who said, hey, I'll pick up your kids so that you can do this. Or there were times when I would pick up their kids. Or, hey, you don't feel well? I'll pick them up and take them to church, and you can have a few hours to yourself and that kind of thing. Having that support system has helped me to understand how we all need each other.
The nuclear family is giving way to something else. In fact, for more than 2 decades, according to the National Center for Health Statistics, about 40% of American babies have been born out of wedlock, and the rest are vulnerable to a high parental divorce rate. Single mothers with an alloparent village are fast becoming the societal norm. And alloparents even include that single dude hanging around helping out single mothers. I happen to be a single mother. My personal trainer lugs our Christmas tree up the stairs every year, and he taught both my girls how to ride bikes. Thank you, Troy. I've also had plenty of what I call hover men, guys who hover around, hoping for sex, but not before I audition them by putting them to work in my house. And women know to keep men happy and helping, they need to look good. Thus, the rise of the MILF, a mom I'd like to a hot mom seeking alloparents or a better mate and looking very attractive while doing it. Fergie knows about MILFs. She wrote her song MILF Money after the birth of her son. You got to see this video. It's filled with hot celebrity moms in lingerie tempting a milkman, some of them breastfeeding.
You got that, you got that, you got that milk money. I got that, I got that, I got that milk money. You got that, you got that, you got that milk.
Even even if child-free women and men aren't giving direct care to other people's kids, they may be doing it indirectly. They may employ parents or work in law or government making rules that support parents. So even if you don't have a cave woman grandmother around, you might have a female boss who helps feed your kids via a paycheck.
As a mother, we have to kind of prioritize our energy, into these lives that are dependent upon us. But I have one friend who prioritizes her energy into going to all these places all over the world and helping to dig wells for kids who already exist and don't have access to clean water. I would love to do that. But for her, that's her way of giving back, contributing to the future, making life better for so many more children than what I can do with my 4. It's just we need all kinds, and we all balance each other out.
Another fascinating thing about human mothers and cooperative breeding is that we'll love and raise a child that isn't genetically ours. Think adoptive parents and step-parents. Evidence of the fact that alloparents and the village are paramount to breeding is the fact that we are one of the only apes that will hand our newborn to a stranger, say the doctor or midwife. Try doing that with a chimp. It's easy to imagine that last century's nuclear family is the best thing for kids. There's plenty of research to show that our culture doesn't yet provide enough supports for single parents, free childcare, tax breaks for parents, and adequate parental leaves. But things are changing as women and men evolve into families that may look more like our hunter-gatherer ancestors than a father-knows-best 1950s-style family.
Mother, too, changes from her daytime clothes. The women of this family seem to feel that they owe it to the men of the family to look relaxed, rested, and attractive at dinner time.
Here's an example of a single woman with 3 children, aged 20, 14, and 2. She's a great example of what our cave women ancestors might have chosen, how she risked her life bearing babies, how she spaced her babies, lost a baby, and replaced a partner. Her maternal life began with an unplanned pregnancy in her early 20s that she chose to terminate. She later married the man who had impregnated her, and later they gave birth to a daughter. When her daughter was 4 years old, this woman was 9 months pregnant with her second child, a son named Kyle. The couple was excited as they arrived at the hospital for a scheduled cesarean section.
I knew that when I got to the hospital and they were prepping me for the C-section, and technician after technician kept coming because they clearly couldn't hear a heartbeat. I kind of knew until my doctor came in, looked at me and said, "I'm really sorry, but your baby didn't survive." I was given 4 months maternity leave. In Canada, you're given a lot of time. I had to bury my son because he was a full-term baby. I actually still think that I probably haven't really dealt with that.
The couple did go on to give birth to a healthy baby boy 14 months later. But soon after, she replaced her partner because he wasn't providing. Single motherhood was hard, but in some ways easier for her.
You know, in my case, it was a different dynamic because I was the provider protector in our household. My husband's income, so I was the breadwinner. So my husband's income was nice and certainly missed when it wasn't there because I was carrying a mortgage, 2 small children. I had to get a nanny. I didn't see him as a provider, hence the reason why this relationship ended. Now, what I did get from that relationship was the physical intimacy, to be completely honest. And that was nice, but it wasn't enough.
After spending a decade as a single mother, her support system included an alloparent in the form of an on-again, off-again boyfriend. Then she accidentally became pregnant again.
So I had been dating my partner for about 9 years on and off at the time. We were in a good period. He's 8 years younger than me. And I'd been working so hard that I had just forgot that I didn't have a period for about 2 months. I decided to take a pregnancy test. For some reason, I just didn't think I could get pregnant. I'm 44 years old. And so I wasn't even thinking about protection. It was just a non-issue until it became an issue and I had a decision to make.
Her decision meant looking at these factors. She was 44. She had 2 children to continue to support. She had a boyfriend, but the relationship had been unstable. And she was the main provider. But get this, she was also a MILF. Her job was to look hot, young, and sexy on TV. What a pressure for a mother.
I am the main featured person in this show. And the first thing I'm thinking is, what is the impact of this pregnancy on this show? Because they hired me for the sexy person that I am, this sassy, able to do anything, anywhere, and travel. And now I'm pregnant and I'm doing the math saying, oh, I have a season to be on and I'll have a baby who's 2 months old. How am I going to do this?
This is the terrifying struggle of every mother. Whether she is a hunter-gatherer worried about keeping a mate while finding enough food for herself and any living children, or a modern-day Homo sapien female scrounging up resources on a TV set, the feelings are the same. The fear is equal. Did you think about terminating the pregnancy?
100%. And for many reasons, I had weighed pros and cons. I was looking at it from a financial point of view. I was looking at it from the impact of my family, the relationship, my 2 older children. How are they going to feel? They were equally shocked when they knew. And I had committed to not sharing it with anyone until I had made the decision we're keeping the baby and we're happy about it. But I also at 44 went to my doctor and said, what are the tests I need to happen? What are the risks? So many pregnancies, it's a high risk. It's over 50% of women over 40 that give birth to a child with some genetic defect over 40. On top of the fact that I'm highly stressed and have no time and another mouth to feed, like what is going to happen here? So yes, I absolutely contemplated it. So my daughter might not have been here had I made the other decision.
And what was the thing that put you over the edge, do you believe, to decide to give birth to her?
I really looked at my pregnancy at that time. Really, I looked at it as a miracle.
In fact, the research shows the number one factor in whether a woman will terminate her pregnancy is maternal age. Younger women are far more likely to have an abortion, as this woman did when she was much younger. Women near the end of their fertility window believe this may be their last chance to have a baby. In the end, this 44-year-old woman has a career, a boyfriend who's a very involved father, and 3 healthy children. I think she's winning the mating game. And when mothers do decide to raise children, the payoff, according to one mom of 4 and grandmother, is that motherhood brings the village together. Cooperative breeding spreads love.
That love that you have as a mother for your children, it's universal. You see it in animals, in the animal kingdom. You see it in different cultures, in different ways, in different countries. And it supersedes almost everything you can think of that would be divisive.
While some people may think the decline of the nuclear family is a signal that society is collapsing, social scientists like me think it's a welcome move backward, back to a time when women had far more reproductive choice, to something more similar to our hunter-gatherer days. More ability to extract resources from the environment, and plenty of allo-parents around to help. This family evolution is not without speed bumps, though. And this new movement to create a culture where women are more free to be, well, women, is coming in loudly and not without conflict. It's cloaked in the current women's rights movement that's sweeping the planet. And if you listen closely, it's about women's rights to attract a mate by how they dress, to mother freely, and to control the timing of their pregnancies.
A group of mothers staged a unique protest outside the pool. They gathered to nurse their children in a show of solidarity.
Iran is one of 2 countries that requires women to cover their head in public. Protests against compulsory hijab have gotten bolder this year, and they're all being broadcast.
Thousands gathered this morning on Manhattan's Upper West Side for the 2nd Women's March on New York City.
Historic change in Saudi Arabia. Women getting behind the wheel.
Our politicians don't have a clue what they're subjecting women to.
Incredible amount of activity going on both in our federal government and across the states to try to close the gender wage gap and to fight pay discrimination. States are especially...
Last month, she announced that she is asking the Federal Election Commission to approve the use of campaign funds for childcare.
It's a noisy time in our evolution. humans continue to adapt to the challenges of their environments and find ways to reproduce. Evolutionary psychologists like me never predict the future. I can tell you one thing. We're in a time of fast-paced social change. In part 2 of Mothers, MILFs, and Wives, how the females in our species are adapting to our environment, an environment that increasingly involves changing technology, from adoption databases to egg freezing to in vitro fertilization and the very emotional choice of terminating a pregnancy. Cave women bodies are operating in a very high-tech age. Mating Matters is produced in partnership with iHeartMedia. It is researched, interviewed, and written by me, Dr. Wendy Walsh, and it is edited and produced by Brooke Peterson. You know, people don't learn about podcasts usually by just searching around. They learn about a podcast because somebody who loved that podcast told them about it. So I encourage you to please subscribe, write a review, and more than anything, hit that share button now. Think of somebody who would like to hear this information as much as you enjoyed it. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Dr. Wendy Walsh. Listen to Mating Matters on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh.